everyone, and welcome back. Today's the day we are going to start working on word problems. And today we're going to just do word problems that have to deal with percent of a number. But before we dive into that, I want to talk about word problems and just give you a little advice and some tips about dealing with them. For some reason, word problems are really scary for people. And I promise you that your brain now is different than when you were younger and you first started learning about word problems. You have more life experience, okay? It's not going to be as difficult unless you stress yourself out about it, all right? Let's talk about some tips and tricks for word problems. So my first tip about dealing with a word problem, whenever you encounter any word problem, the first thing that you should understand is what is the question? What are you trying to figure out? And one way to kind of really make it helpful for you is to put yourself in the situation. Remember, word problems with math are just like problems in real life, right? The steps are the exact same, okay? It's just some math is involved, okay? This is problem solving 101. So number one, what is the question? Try to put yourself in the situation. Number two, what info do you have and what do you need? A lot of times in some of these word problems, they're going to give you useless information. So again, it's really important to understand what the question is because that's going to help you weed out the information that is critical and the information that doesn't matter. All right, number three, make a mental plan. Just try to get an idea of what you're going to be doing without actually doing any math, okay? Just make a mental plan about what steps you're going to take to solve. And then you're going to actually solve using all that fun math computation. Now, this one is a huge issue. Don't get lost in the math. It is so important that you keep your work organized and that you label and that you know what the numbers mean. If you do long division and you get an answer, it is critical that you understand what you just figured out, okay? You have to know what numbers mean. And then finally, number five, look back. Did you answer the question? And does it make sense, okay? A lot of times these questions, they try to trick you. And like, for example, they'll ask you to figure out how many feet something is, and then when you're doing your computation you get an answer in inches, but you're like, ooh, I got an answer finally. And sometimes they'll put that answer as one of the answer choices. They're so mean. So make sure you always look back and did you answer the question? Maybe you have to do some last minute unit conversion or whatever, okay? And then does your answer make sense? Okay, so these are just some tricks and tips to think about when you're dealing with word problems. But the biggest thing is put yourself in the situation. Imagine you're there and you're trying to problem solve. I know you guys have to do all the problem solving when it comes to Army stuff, okay? This is problem solving 101. All right, let's talk about percent of a number word problems. So this whole worksheet is dealing with discounts, taxes, and tips, and some other percent of a number type situations. Really common type of question on the AFCT. So we're going to go through these together, okay? All right, for all of these problems, I'm going to show you how to set them up using the formula I just showed you in the last video about percent of a number. So let's just review that real quick. So percent of whole equals part. Now, when you're dealing with word problems, the most important thing is when you are looking at the word problem, you have to figure out which of these is the whole, which is the part, and which is the percent, and you need to put them into the right place. So let's talk about what these words might be disguised as in a word problem. So the whole is always the original price. Or it could be the total amount of something. So for example, a food bill, or if you purchase things at the store. Whatever the whole is, it's always disguised as the original price or the total amount of something, the full amount. The part could be a tax, it could be a tip, it could be a discount. It's always a piece of the whole, okay? So it's a tax, a tip, a discount. Trying to think if there's anything else it could be. Can't think of anything right now, but if I do, I'll add it later, okay? And then your percent is just whatever the percentage rate is. That's usually the easiest one to fill in, okay? So, looking at number 1, let's first do our percent of whole equals part. Because then all we have to do is figure out where this information goes, okay? All right, the Schrutes went out to eat at Chili's. If their bill was $58.65 and they gave their server a 15% tip, what was the total bill? So we're at a restaurant and we have a bill and we're trying to calculate the tip, and we need to figure out what the total bill was. So in this case, see if you can figure out what goes where, including your X. What are we trying to figure out? So the percent would obviously be 15, right? That's the only percentage we have to work with. The whole in this case would be, what is their original amount? What is their original price? It would be the $58.65, right? So we're going to put that here. Okay, sorry, I'm going to move this up a little bit. And then in this case, we are trying to figure out the part, which for this problem is the tip. We need to figure out what is the tip, and then what we're going to need to do is, whatever the tip is, we need to add it back to the total amount because we are trying to figure out the total bill. That is our question. So now we are going to first figure out the tip. How are we going to do that? Well, first thing we need to do is change the percent to a decimal, and then we are going to, of means, multiply by 58.65. So I'm going to do 58, actually I'm going to do it over here, 58.65 times 0.15, okay? So we just changed this to 0.15 times 58.65. So go ahead and do that computation now, and I'll meet up with you at the end. Pause your video. Okay, so when you did your multiplication, you should have ended up with 87975. Next step I'm going to do is move my decimal, and I need to move it 1, 2, 3, 4 places. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 places. Now, what did we just figure out? What does this number represent? We just calculated the tip, right? This is money. Do we need this many decimal places when we're dealing with money? No, we don't. We only need 2 decimal places. So we're going to have to round. We're rounding this decimal place here. That's the hundredths place. So I'm looking at the digit to the right. It's between 5 and 9. So this is going to get bumped up. And since it's a 9, it bumps up to 0. Therefore, the 7 is going to bump up to 8. So the tip is actually $8.80 rounded. Okay, am I done? No, all I did was calculate the tip. They want me to calculate the total bill. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to simply add the 58.65 to the 880. All right. Go ahead and do that computation. Okay, so you should have gotten $67.45. That is the answer to the question. Remember all these steps, we just did everything that we talked about here in our problem, all right? Let's go ahead and work on number 2. Go ahead and do your percent of a number, because all these problems are going to require that. I want you to read through the problem and see if you can determine which is the whole and which is the part, okay? Number 2, Pam spent $205.60 at Target. If the sales tax is 6%, what was her final bill? All right, so Pam's at Target, she bought some stuff, and she's still got to pay the tax, which is 6% tax rate. So we're trying to calculate again the total bill. So which numbers would go here? Well, we know what goes here, the percent, right? So that's an easy fix. Now, are we trying to figure out the whole or the part? Well, we need to calculate what the tax is, right? And remember, the tax is always considered to be a part. So for this question, the X is going to go under part, and our whole represents her total bill without the tax, right? So $205.60. So now we need to calculate 6% of $205.60. You should know what to do for that. Go ahead and set up your multiplication of $205.60. Notice I took off this 0 at the end. I don't really need it. I just left it off. Times 0.06. All right, go ahead and do your computation and I'll meet you at the end. Okay, so you should have gotten 12336. We need to move our decimal still 3 places. 1, 2, 3. So we have a similar situation of what happened over here. This amount represents what? What did we just figure out in terms of this problem? This represents the tax, right? And this is money, so we don't need all these decimal places. We only need 2, so we need to round. And that would round to, let's see, digit to the right of the 3 is a 6, so that's going to get bumped up to 4. So that's going to be 12.34. That represents the tax. Now I need to answer the question, right? What was her final bill? So what do I need to do with this number? I need to add it to her original amount. So $205.60 plus 12.34. Go ahead and do your computation. So her total bill with tax should be $217.94. All right, I hope you're doing okay so far. See if you can set up number 3 on your own, and I will show you the worked out answer when we come back. All right, percent of something, percent of whole equals part. In this case, our percent was 35, our whole was 124.50, and we needed to figure out the part, which in this case, the part is going to represent the discount, right? The store is having a sale. We bought this much stuff. We need to figure out what our discount is going to be, okay? So I went ahead and did my 124.50 times 0.35, and that calculated a discount of $43.58. Now, in order to figure out the total bill, what do I need to do with this number? It's a discount, so it's being taken away from our price. So that means I need to subtract from our $124.50 from our original price. So your new price with your 35% discount is going to be $80.92. All right, go ahead and try setting up number 4. Okay. Your setup should have been 20% of 5240 equals X. We are trying to calculate the part, which in this problem was a tip. The part represented a tip. So we did our multiplication. Your tip should have worked out to be $10.48. And then we had to calculate the total bill, right? The question is, how much would each person pay splitting the bill evenly? So we needed to calculate the total bill with the tip, which worked out to $62.88. And then we had to divide amongst the people that were at that restaurant. So it was Dwight and his 3 friends. That means there were 4 people at this beet restaurant. So we should have divided our $62.88 by 4 to get $15.72 per person, which was your final answer. Okay, if you put 3 here, every single class there was always a group of people that ended up putting 3, okay? So, common mistake. All right, these ones are 5 and 6. They are not taxes, tips, discounts, but you can use the exact same setup. So see if you, oops, I'm sorry, I'm shaking. So see if you can figure out how to set these up using your percent of a number situation, and go ahead and solve the problems, okay? And then I'll show the answers when we come back. So go ahead and pause your video and do those 2. All right, let's talk about number 5. For your percent of a number setup, you would be needing to figure out 25% of 32, because that was the total amount of games that they played. So when you do your math, you work out to 8 games. So they won 8 of their games. Now, there's probably a few of you that just did that in your head. And let's talk about why some people are just able to quickly do it in their head. 25%. If you ever need to find 25% of something, all you're really doing is dividing by 4, right? Because 25% represents 1/4. So if you ever need to find 25% of something, all you do is just divide by 4. So 32 divided by 4 is 8. It's the same thing if you had to do, I'm just going to do a little side note here. If you had to do 50% of something, 50% of 30, it's just half of 30, right? Because 50% represents half. So that would be 15. If you had to do 25% of, let's say 20, remember with 25%, all you're doing is dividing by 4. So 20 divided by 4 is 5. If you had to find 25% of 60, 60 divided by 4 is 15. All right, so if you ever need to find 1/4 of something, 25% of something, all you're doing is dividing this number by 4 to get the part, okay? All right, let's talk about number 6. With number 6, we had to figure out how many calories does a piece of sugar-free gum have? And we know that sugar-free gum contains 40% less calories than regular gum. So regular gum has 40 calories. So what we need to do is figure out, well, what is 40% of 40 to calculate the total number of less calories that there are, that is in sugar-free gum. So if you do 40% of 4, you get 16. So it's 16 calories less than the 40 calories of the full fat gum, or whatever you want to call it. So to calculate the sugar-free gum total calories, you would have done 40 minus 16 to get 24. All right. Okay, we're gonna skip number 7 for now. Go ahead and do number 8. All right, so for this one, we have Angela buying some groceries. So the first thing I would have wanted to know is what was the total cost for all her groceries, and then I would have calculated the tax based on that total. So the first thing I did was add all those up and I got $15.70. And then to calculate the tax, we did 5% of $15.70, which worked out to, you had to do some rounding, worked out to 79 cents. And then you should have added the original full amount with the tax, and you should have gotten $16.49, okay? All right, so all of those problems, we were missing the part. We're gonna do some problems in the next video that require you to find the percent and the whole, okay? So stay tuned for that. And with number 7, we're gonna come back to this one, okay? We'll come back to it, I promise. All right, so enjoy the rest of your day and see you at the next video.